Hello, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon session for Conflict Resolution 2. I am your hostess, your facilitator, Rika Grubbs. Just call me Rika. That's all you need. And I wanted to say we have someone that's going to be monitoring our chat and letting folks in. So we're good there. But Conflict Resolution 2 is what we're working on today. Not sure who was all able to come to the Conflict Resolution 1 session. If you were not able to, we're going to kind of start at the beginning, kind of do some refreshing so that you can catch up. And for those who did get to go to the attend the Conflict Resolution 1, we'll refresh so that you can kind of remember where you are so that we would be able to build on that and move forward. All right, just to get us started, again, hello to you all. To get us started, our norms today, the chat will be monitored. It is monitored by our wonderful Nicole Drawn. Nicole, thank you for being a part of our team. She's a new member of our training and development team. You want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. We're so glad to have you here.
I'm so glad to have you. I want you to keep in mind, this is a 1-hour session, so it's so much that I need to jam pack in. And it's so easy to go down rabbit trails. So we are going to, kind of save our questions towards the end, or you can put your question in the chat and Nicole will be monitoring that. So if she has the answer for you, she'll answer it. And if she doesn't, she'll save it for me to the end. I'll ask that you stay muted, and there will be a post-evaluation link at the end of the session because I need to make sure you stay. And she'll put that in there. And we'll give you some instructions as we start to wrap up. All right, so by the time you leave here today, you will remember your conflict style, learn the 3P approach to conflict resolution, learn to get curious and ask questions, and then learn to agree to disagree. So real quick recap on what the definition of conflict, according to Indeed.com, conflict is a disagreement or argument that can arise in various circumstances and settings, including in the workplace. They could very well say, especially in the workplace, right? So the conflict is a disagreement. It's a circumstance. It arises. It takes on various forms, right? But it happens. And if you came to the last session, the Conflict Resolution 1, you learned that conflict is normal and healthy. I'm going to remind you of that. Conflict is normal and healthy. It's a part of a healthy relationship and work environment. So it's important to understand how to navigate and resolve them, right? Because conflict is inevitable, you need to know and understand how to be able to maneuver through that conflict. We don't have to just accept what conflict brings. We don't have to automatically go to the negative when we hear the word conflict. It's normal, it's healthy, it's supposed to happen. Now, once it happens, what do I do with it? And that's what we're here for today. In Conflict Resolution 1, we turned the mirror on ourselves. We looked at ourselves. Typically, when we approach conflict, we go straight to the other person. That finger gets to pointing. If I'm in conflict, it's your fault. It's what you did. What are you going to do for me? Right? But what we learned is we need to find out where we are. Where am I in this conflict? Where do I live? How did I get here? Why did I understand things to be this way? right? What do I know about conflict? What is it that I want? Where did that come from? What's my triggers, right? Those things we looked at in conflict resolution 1, because whenever we're trying to get somewhere and where we're trying to get, we're trying to get to a resolution, right? If we're trying to get somewhere, we have to know where we are first. If you type in an address into the Waze app or your navigation system, it's going to ask you where you are, but it's going to, figure out where you're located in order to get you there in the best route. If you put it in there and you're, if you're putting it in from your workplace, but you really need to know how to get to that place from home, it's going to give you a different route. And so with conflict resolution, we looked at ourselves. Where am I right now so that I can take the best path forward in learning how to resolve conflict? So I'm going to give you a refresher. And if you did conflict resolution 1, there was a session where there was no sound. So this is the makeup. And this is probably about a 3-minute video. Make sure you're listening to this. Pay attention, see where you are in this whole thing.
Hi. What do you do when you're feeling angry or upset with another person? Do you go quiet and try to avoid an argument? Do you huff, puff, slam doors, shout or insult others? Do you apologise to make peace even if you're not in the wrong? Or do you speak calmly and try to find a compromise? Everyone is different, and what we usually do may not always work. So one thing that can be really helpful with managing our relationships with friends and family is to work out what our conflict style is. I like to remember the different conflict styles as animals. So let's have a look and see which style we can relate to. Here's the accommodating bear. This is cooperating to a high degree, sometimes at the expense of your own goals and objectives. The accommodating bear might say, I don't care that much, have it your way, or I give in. This conflict style can be effective when the other party is the expert or has a better solution, or if you really want to maintain a future relationship. However, if this happens too often, you may find yourself feeling resentful that you are unable to give your opinion or be heard. The avoiding turtle. This is when you simply avoid the issue. The avoiding turtle may say, I'd just rather not deal with this right now. Avoiding would be positive for dangerous situations. It allows you to step back and cool down. And not so positive if you don't give your opinion or speak up when it's something that really matters to you. Avoiding is not a good long-term strategy. You aren't helping the other party reach their goals, and you aren't assertively pursuing your own. Next, the collaborating owl. This is where you pair up with the other party to achieve both of your goals, breaking free of the win-lose idea and seeking the win-win. The collaborating owl may say, 2 heads are better than 1. This can mean reframing the challenge and creating a space for everybody's ideas. The downside is that it requires a high degree of trust, time and effort from everyone involved to ensure that everyone is happy enough. Here's the competing shark. This is the win-lose approach. The competing shark may say, I take charge, and act in a very assertive way to achieve your goals. This approach may be helpful when you need quick, decisive action, but can be unhelpful in other situations as sharks aren't too fussed about relationships. So being a shark too often may lead to losing friends. Lastly is the compromising fox. This is the lose-lose scenario where neither party really achieves what they want. The competing fox may say, let's meet halfway, or let's split the difference. This may be appropriate for scenarios where you need a temporary solution or where both sides have equally important goals. A negative is that it can be time-consuming if both parties do not want to give something up. So, which conflict style do you most relate to? Do you recognise yourself in any of them? What about your friends and family? What are their go-to conflict styles? It's really important to remember that no one style is necessarily better than the other. As we saw, there's pros and cons to each one. No one style is fixed either. So next time you're in a conflict, how about practicing different approaches to see if you can get a better outcome? Bye-bye.
All right, so your conflict, did you see yourself? Did you see what your typical conflict style is? Again, I love this video because it identifies it, it relates it to an animal, right? But at the same time, it did not give just the positive or just the negative with that particular style, right? Each style has a positive and a negative, right? Too much of a good thing can turn bad, right? So, I used to be very excited at the fact that, I'm a compromiser. I don't mind compromising. I want to hear what someone else has to say. But if I compromise too much, then I'm going to lose something. I'm going to feel like kind of taken advantage of, right? Or we look at the avoider and say, oh, you're an avoider, you're a runner, you're not going to, stand here and be a part of this resolution or solution. So you're a runner, but sometimes it is absolutely okay to avoid. If you're not in a space where you feel safe, you don't need to, keep moving forward with that. You need to kind of pull back and collect yourself or make sure that you're in a safe space. So I love that video. So for my annotators, for those who have been part of my trainings before, this is where I try to get some engagement and get you involved a little bit. So for those who can remember, your annotate is up at the top. If you hover over, go over to the side, annotate, ANNOTATE. Let me make sure that it is enabled. Yep, it is enabled. And once you click on annotate, you should see where it says stamp. That's about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 over stamp. Let's look at get the stars and the hearts, right? And mark on here what your conflict resolution style is. With your heart or a star. There we go. Yeah, a lot of collaborators, good. And if you can't get into the annotate, if you can't find it, don't stress out. Just put it in the chat. If you're accommodating, if you typically are the collaborator or avoiding, competing, compromise. And don't be afraid to be someone who competes, right? Competition is good. Conflict is good. It's when we go overboard is where we start to have problems. Accommodating is good, but too much of it can be a problem. So, don't not put something on there because you don't, in fear of judgment. This is judge-free zone in Rika's training, judge-free zone. We're showing up as we are so that we can unpack these things and be able to, honestly move forward. I love it. That's right. Be honest. And then think about where you are in your conflict style. Are you, all the way to the left, all the way to the right, or do you kind of in between? You have some boundaries set where you can say, you know what, I'm accommodating, but I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me. Or I like to compete, but I'm not going to push it too far. I'll compromise, but I'm not, just giving up everything so I feel like I lose. I'll avoid just because I want to make sure I'm safe. So think about where you are in your conflict style. Awesome. All right, I'm going to disable and clear so that we can move forward. So thank you for participating in that. If you did not find the annotate, or you just found it and didn't get a chance to put your stamp on it, we'll give you another option or opportunity here a little bit later. Again, a recap. And some of you are saying, okay, Rika, we went over this already. Well, that was a couple months ago. And, a lot of times we get done with PD and we're done, right? We don't think about it. We haven't practiced it. We said we will, but we don't. So I just want to make sure that those of you who did attend the session before, that you are brought back up to speed. And then for those who were not able to be a part of it, can get caught up, right? So we talked about being effective rather than reactive. I mean, how many of us have like this knee-jerk reaction to conflict? You know, I don't like this, what happened, and boom, and make a quick decision, right? And that decision is not helpful to the solution, right? And so we did an overview of all of these boxes, but what we're going to focus on and where we're going to pick up today is on understand another's perspective. Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Keep that in mind. And then we're going to also focus on the problem solve. Can you agree? Can you agree? Or if you can't agree, if you disagree, will you be mad? Do you just want to be mad? You know, sometimes there's an opportunity for agreement and people just, you know what, it's just easier to be mad because, you know, personality wise, we just have the way that we show up. Happy people get happy, that it doesn't matter what happens in their life. It can be catastrophic, but they're still going to find a reason to be happy. Mad people are going to be mad. It doesn't matter how happy everything and how good things are going in their life. They're going to find a reason to be mad, right? So sometimes people just want to be mad and we can't do anything about that, right? But we can increase our understanding of different ways to approach situations. So you all know the saying, an eye for an eye. And Gandhi just kind of took it a step further and said, an eye for an eye will only make the whole world blind, right? Yet basically an eye for an eye says, you know, if you do it to me, I can do it to you. But it's always, that's taken kind of out of context because, you know, people take it out of context. We have taken it out of context. We have done that to justify our stance. But if I do it to you and you do it to me, and then, you know, and it goes on and on and on, like no one wins. No one ever wins with that. And if everyone is trying to fight for their position, no one's going to win. We always, and I say we, I just included, and I say always. I shouldn't say always or never, but give me some grace. I'm learning. I'm working on that. But typically, when we think of conflict, we think of it as something that's kind of combative, like conflict, like that, you're against me. If you don't think like me, if you don't agree with me, then you're against me. And that's just simply not true. But if we always, you know, think of conflict in a negative way, that's going to be our stance. That's our initial approach, to fight the person, fight against the person, fight for my position, right? But what we need to do is learn that there are benefits to conflict. Again, it has its purpose. It's healthy, it's normal, it's inevitable. So since it's inevitable, how do we get out in front of it and agree to disagree when we don't agree, right? But taking it a step further, feel good about it. We can feel good about that conflict. And one way to do it is to learn a new approach to conflict. The 3 P's of conflict resolution: perception, perspective, and point of view. Now, sometimes I may say POV, point of view. Perception, perspective, and point of view. Now, for me, anytime I heard these words, I use them interchangeably, like, you know, like synonyms. Sometimes I might use perception, sometimes I might use perspective, right? Sometimes I might use perspective, sometimes I might use point of view. They're close. But when we're looking at conflict resolution, we're going to see that even though they're close, they actually build upon each other. Let's break it down, and I'll kind of spend a little bit of time just kind of breaking these down, right? Bear with me and make sure you stay muted. All right. So perception is basically how I see something, how I see it, how is my ability to hear it. It is what I am aware of. I perceive something is going on. I am aware that something is going on. It's how I see something, right? Based on pretty much my beliefs and my knowledge. What I know, based on what I know, this is what I'm aware of. This is what I see. This is what I hear. So when I pop that up, some people immediately saw a vase. Some may have said it's an hourglass or one of those timers, right? Some people, when they saw it pop up, they saw the two faces facing each other. I beg to differ that they're both true. It's not just a vase. It's not just two faces facing each other. There actually are two photos within the one. You can put in the chat what did you see first? And if you could identify both. All right, so my perception is that there's two pictures here. Some of you may say that it was one. Perspective is the meaning that I give to what I see, hear, or am aware of, right? It's that meaning that I give to it. So my perception is what I saw. My perspective is the meaning that I give, right? Based on like the differences and experiences, right? So the meaning that I gave to that picture is, oh, wow, there's two sides to every story. Right? I may see you may see the vase, I may see the faces, but now I notice that both of them are there. So maybe there's two sides to every story. So that's the meaning that I gave to what I saw. So what I'm going to do is show a video that's going to kind of go a little bit deeper into my explanation.
So where do these differences of perspective come from, right? There's a lot of things that can feed into it. So in this particular example, right, this guy's like, oh, the water is really deep. And this one's like, no, it's not, right? Because for him, it's not deep. For him, it is, right? So differences of perspective, right? They have a different perspective on the situation is based on their different experiences. So for this person who's drowning in the water, right, like it feels really deep. For this person who's just up to their ankles, it doesn't, all right? Different backgrounds will change how you have a perspective. So if I grew up one particular way, if I'm really used to living in a particular way, I'm going to look at situations differently than someone who grew up in a way that's very different from me, right? So you can imagine if I grew up in a family, well, I did grow up in a family, right, that was mixed Chinese and sort of American background, I guess. And so the way I grew up, I was really used to going to Chinatown, eating particular foods. I eat with chopsticks, right? Things like that. Whereas if I went in other people's families, right, they didn't do those things. So their perspective might have been a really different about what it means to eat with chopsticks, about the food I ate, about the things I did that I thought were perfectly normal. They might have a different perspective on that because they grew up differently, right? Different moods affect different situations. So in this case, this guy's all upset and drowning. He's upset and freaking out. Like it feels really deep and he's starting to get anxious and splashing around. And this person, you know, is calm and feeling like they're fine, right? Again, in this situation, they're in the same situation. They're both standing there. This guy might be like, oh, he's freaking out for no reason. This person being really anxious, being like, this guy was a jerk. He didn't even help me, right? Same situation, different perspective. Finally, different locations can change your different perspectives, right? They're in the same situation, but maybe it just happens to be really shallow here. Maybe they're both the same height, right? But because he's slightly in a different location, it's different in that location. That can change his perspective. Also, he's in a higher angle, so he's up higher. He can see more things. Maybe this guy can't see else what's going on, so it makes him anxious. Different perspective on the same exact situation. Obviously, there are a lot of other things that can cause these differences in perspective, but just keep that in mind. There are a lot of different things that go into who we are and how we see the world on a moment-to-moment basis, but also based on our history, our family history, what we're used to, what we're comfortable with, how we're feeling that day, that can completely change our perspective on a situation and make us more or less able to solve a problem in that situation, right? Again, this person who's maybe calm and standing on, shallow ground might be a lot better able to be helpful and solve this problem than this guy who maybe is freaking out and feeling like they're drowning and doesn't know what to do and can't see what's going on around them. This guy could look around, find like a stick, help him out because he's calm, right? Different perspective on the same situation, which might make different people be able to contribute in a different way based on their perspective at a different time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Different perspectives allow people to contribute in a different way. A dramatic pause, right? Because I really wanted that to sink in. Different perspectives allow people to contribute in a different way based on what they see, based on their worldview, right? The way they see the world, based on their perception. The perspective is the meaning that they give to their perception. And then you have the point of view. So 3 P's: perception, perspective, and then you have your point of view, your POV, point of view. And it is the position that's taken based on the meaning that you gave to what you saw. So again, they build on each other. I see something, I give it meaning, and then I take a position. And in conflict 1, we did everything to make sure you stay on mute. All right. Okay. So in conflict 1, we turned the mirror on ourselves, right? And what is my point of view? How do I show up in this, right? How do I see the world? What meaning did I give to what I saw, right? What we're going to do though in conflict resolution 2 is we're going to shift from it being all about what I want and who I am. We have to identify that, but we don't stay there. We don't get stuck there. That's part of our issues with resolving conflict, is because we just kind of dig our heels in where we are, my point of view, the meaning I gave it, what I saw, right? We dig our heels in there and we don't really consider others. So today in conflict resolution 2, we're going to shift from the I, me, my point of view, my worldview, and we're going to shift it to consider others, right? Because other people see the world the way they do, based on their experiences, based on their differences, based on their beliefs and what they know, based on the information that's provided to them. We all have a worldview. We all have a point of view, right? Mine does not necessarily mean be better than yours. Yours is not automatically better than mine. So what we have to do is take that pivot, shift, first see where we are. Where am I in this? Okay, now where are you in this? What did I see, give meaning, and take a stance on? And now what stance are you taking based on the meaning that you gave to what you saw? Now, I don't want to seem like I'm like beating this horse to death, but it's important that we take the time to go through that, because if we don't, we miss it and we revert back to what we know. And what we know is what we've been doing in conflict resolution. My position, I'm right, you're wrong, and nothing gets solved. Or we solved it, we agreed, we solved it because you agreed with me, or because I gave in to you, right? That's not how we're going to handle conflict going forward. Going forward, I see things, I give it meaning, I take a stance. This is my position. Now I'm going to also understand that you took a stance based on the meaning you gave what you saw. We're looking at the same thing. You may see the vase, I see the faces. They're both there, right? So in conflict 1, at the end, we made a commitment to working on how we handle conflict. We had strategies. There were like 6 strategies that were given. Acknowledge the conflict, consider the greater good, check my motives, build on agreements, stay open, collaborate and compromise. And at the end, we annotated and we said, okay, going forward, I'm going to work on acknowledging my conflict or whatever it was, right? But if you take a notice, if you notice on the left-hand side, those deal with me. They all need to be done. These are all strategies. But when I look at the left, those pretty much deal with me. I'm going to acknowledge my conflict. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to acknowledge that there's a conflict, because you will never address what you don't acknowledge, right? There is a conflict. I'm going to acknowledge that. I'm going to check my motives. What is it that I'm trying to get out of this? Do I just want to be right? Do I, want to exert my power? What is it that I'm trying to do in this thing? Why am I still in this conflict? Why can't it be resolved? Check my motives. And then I said, I'm going to stay open, right? I'm going to stay open to the possibilities that, I could be wrong. I may be missing something. I'll stay open. So acknowledge the conflict, check my motives, and staying open. That's mine. That is mine. I can't control you. I can only control me. So I'm going to take what's mine, right? But when we shift it to others, we'll realize that considering the greater good, yeah, that has to do with more than just me, all right? Consider, like, the collateral damage that can come out of staying in this conflict. Consider, what the benefits that we can get out of this conflict. Building on agreement. Remember, there are things that we agree upon. Most of the time, there's something in there we agree upon, but we don't focus on that. We focus on the stuff that, we can't agree on. And that's how the conflict kind of lingers. And then once we can build on those agreements, we can collaborate and compromise. That's a strategy to resolving conflict. Figuring out where I am, and then considering others. This is a strategy. And how do you start that? Like, a lot of times we can walk away and we can say, here's 6 steps to a successful conflict resolution. Here they are, and then that's it. We're going to kind of go into, how do you start? Right. And let me say this. There is no one size fit all solution to conflict resolution. Right. There are many ways that we could get through conflict resolution. Today, we're just going to focus in on one strategy. Okay, so I want to make that very clear, because sometimes, people want you to tell them what to do. Well, what works for me may not work for you, or if you don't work it the way that I have worked it, you're not going to get the same result. So, when going to professional development, understand that there's no one person that can give you all the answers. All right. Take what you can and make sure that you work it, and then you'll start to see the results. So again, one way to be able to consider others, take it off me, consider others, is to get curious. I mean, we have to try to want to understand others. And that's, that was very intentional. Try to want to understand. Sometimes people do stuff and I don't understand it. And I don't want to understand. Like that makes no sense to me. Like, why would they do that? Why would they think that? Why would they, whatever? I don't get it. But when I want to understand, then I open it up to creating a safe space. Sometimes people do things and they don't even know why they do it. But once I try to understand, I open up this safe space, and that gives them an opportunity to learn even about themselves. But we have to be able to open up this safe space and have like this judge-free zone. Like, I'm not going to judge you for how you behave or what you're doing. And I don't want you to judge me. So we have this judge-free zone, this safe space without judgment, where we can come and unpack the things that are keeping us in this conflict. Now, again, there are people who just want to be mad, but if we can practice on the people who do want to try to work at this conflict resolution thing, once we come upon that person that, just want to be mad, we have some strategies. We have, a little bit more experience with dealing with that. So how do I want to understand you? What helps me to try to understand you? Well, I have to ask questions. Questions that are about me. What do I want? What are my choices? And how do I understand this? And it's okay to ask those questions of yourself, right? Because again, you have to know where you're starting. What is it that I really want out of this? Because a lot of times with conflict, the person is just not giving up on something, and what they're not giving up is really not even, it doesn't matter. We're just mad that they didn't agree with us or that they have their own opinion. So what is it that I really want? And if you really want, if the ultimate thing is a solution, then you'll more than likely stay open to be able to get to that. If it is to be right, you will close yourself down until someone gives in to you. What are my choices? Like, do I have to just dig my heels into this answer or solution? Or are there other possible solutions out there? Maybe it's from that other person, right? And how do I understand this? Am I understanding this from a very closed-minded position where this is the way that I understand it? I grew up this way and this is how we do it. We also have to consider the fact that other people are asking themselves questions, that they have a stance as well. And so you ask those questions of yourself to see where you are, but then you shift and also ask questions that consider others. How else can I think about this? What assumptions am I making about others? What is the other person thinking, feeling, or wanting? Now, the questions can be exhaustive. It doesn't have to be these 3 questions, but you have to ask some questions. And this is a good start because you're shifting to think about, okay, well, how else can I think about this or that person? Are there other things that might be available? Am I assuming that just because they don't agree that they're mad at me or that they are, whatever name I want to call them? And what are they thinking about this? What do they feel? What do they want? I mean, I think, feel, and want. Maybe they do too. Maybe we think, feel, and want the same thing. We're just not communicating it in the language that we are familiar with. I've done mediations and have found that two people are sitting there saying the same thing, but because they don't understand it the way that they're saying it, they don't think that they are. Or because they're not hearing those buzzwords where they feel like they won, they don't think that they are. So asking questions is going to open up your understanding of others, the others that you have to consider in conflict. Now, imagine the shoe on the other foot. I love this picture. I love this picture because it really shows the shoe on the other foot. Before, I always took that saying and I would, here's where I am. Okay, now I'm going to put my feet in their shoes. And I would try to put my feet in their shoes, right? But it doesn't say the shoes on the other foot, right? Imagine the shoe on the other foot. Why does that matter? It means I don't have to give up my position in order to understand or to try to consider yours. I don't have to take off both of my shoes and get into both of yours to try to get you. I leave on one of my shoes and I put on your shoe. I still have my stance, my position, my perspective, my perception. I still have those things. But now I'm going to put on yours and try to understand where you're coming from. How do you see the world? How did you take this stance and based on the meaning that you gave to something you saw? How does that, how can I do that? And once I still keep my position and understand where I am, and I put on your shoe, and now maybe I can see where we both actually can come together. A lot of times when we think of conflict resolution, we think we have to give up something, and that's the real fight. The real fight is, in order to resolve this, that means that I can't win, I can't get what I want, you get what you want, and I lost. Not true. Not true. And once you open up that dialogue, that discussion, you can, see where you stand, see where you are, try to understand better where they are, and then see where we can come together and build on what we do agree upon. Having that safe space, that judge-free zone, right? We have to consider our differences. We always, we hear we're talking about apples and oranges here, right? And we know apples and oranges have different textures, different color, different tastes, different health benefits. They are different. But the thing that they do have in common is that they're fruit, right? So I have my values, I have my experiences, my personal biases, my personal personality traits, and I have certain information that was provided to me. There's certain things I know. But don't you? You have your own values, you have your own experiences, personal biases, personality traits, and information that's available to you. Right? Just like the apple and the orange are both fruit, there are some things that we have in common. We can always start on the human level. If we can't find anything else, start with being a human, right? Then after that, let's build on some of the things that we have in common. Build on the things we can agree on. And then we can and consider, well, my value system is this, well, their value system is that. Okay, well, we may not be able to agree here. Experiences, I have these experiences. Oh my God, I do too. Once I talk to you, I realize, oh my God, you're a human being and you have some experiences that I share. Like, it all comes out in the conversation. It all comes out in dialogue. It all comes out in trying to ask questions and trying to understand the other person's perspective, why they value certain things. Well, it may be because it was ingrained in them growing up. Doesn't make it right or wrong, but that's just how they showed up. We all show up the way that we do because of all the things that pushed us to this point. Whether it is our prior experiences, our upbringing, our parents, our influences, our environment, whatever, our choices, whatever it is, brought us to this point. And now we are showing up with all of that, right? And when we show up with all of that, and then we don't explain any of it, we just say, this is the position that I'm taking because this is what this means, and that's what I saw. Now I need to try to understand now, why are you showing up the way that you're showing up? What's your worldview? What meaning did you give the things that you saw? All right, that's how we start to break down some of that tension that comes in conflict once it goes to the negative side. So here, I'm going to give you an opportunity to annotate, get involved, get engaged. If you can't annotate, use the chat feature. And what are you, what will you work on? Would you work on considering the viewpoints of others going forward based on what you've heard today? Are you going to work on understanding people better, empathizing, trying to make connection, better communication? What are you going to work on to help you to actually, try to get to a solution? We're trying to resolve the conflict. So what do you commit to working on? And again, use your chat if you can't annotate. And I love the connection. A lot of the conflict that we end up, that kind of lingers is because we're disconnected from each other. We're disconnected by our experiences. We're disconnected by our differences. We're disconnected by our choices. There's so many things that disconnect us. So making a commitment to try to make more of a connection is powerful. It is a powerful force in coming to a solution. Considering the viewpoint of others is a must. Understanding, yes. Communicate, yes. Yes. Empathy is powerful. And that's not something that we are necessarily taught growing up, like in words, right? I grew up with, you have to be sympathetic. You got to show sympathy. That whole empathy thing, it's just like perception, perspective, and point of view. It just empathy, sympathy. I thought it was the same thing. But being able to empathize with others, to be able to understand it from their point of view. Awesome. Awesome. I wish we were in person and we can actually kind of unpack this and talk about it, because it just everyone sharing their experiences kind of drives home the point. But technology, we'll use it for what we can use it for. But thank you for sharing, for all those who shared. So again, we have the strategy on conflict 1, some of the things that we said that we would work on. Back to like, acknowledging the conflict, considering the greater good, and building on those agreements. How do we do that? How do we go forth and actually practice this strategy to work on the perception, or understanding the perception, the perspective, and the point of view of others? How do we do that? We have to learn how to ask questions. We have to learn how to ask questions, not just any questions. We learn to ask the why questions. We that's like the first thing we learn, right? Why this as kids? Why? It was, everything is why. We just want to understand why. And I should say, but we don't always learn how to take that why question deeper, right? If I ask a why question, typically the first word of the answer starts with because. Why do they behave this way? Because they're ignorant, right? When we ask why questions, it's a start. You have to start somewhere. You have that question, but then you have to take it deeper. But when we ask that why question, we automatically find an answer, and then we settle in on that. We don't go deeper. Like, I done made a statement. Really, I just made a statement. Why do they behave that way? Because they're ignorant. Case closed. I'm done. Has to be the reason. Made a statement. But why, what has happened in their life that to make them show up this way? Well, maybe I need to ask them another question, or maybe I need to, find out. Maybe I need to, get a little closer to, like, once you make a statement, that's it. Our statements are promise to ourselves. That's it. When I say it, my word is my bond. This is it. But once I make that statement, I have closed myself for any other possibility. Why this? Because that. Case closed, I'm done. But we have to learn how to ask questions, not just any questions. We have to learn how to ask good, better, and specific questions. It takes practice. I am learning how to ask better questions. And the more questions I ask, the better questions I ask, the better my answers, and my options seem to just open up. The world is opening up to me because I'm asking good, better, and specific questions. When I lived my life on why, I was stuck on the response to that why. But when I opened up my questions to really understand, man, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this, it could be that, right? There's all these possibilities that's out there. And I have to manage that because I don't want to be so, questioning that I don't settle on anything. I don't want to say that too much of anything good is still bad. So I have to manage that. But asking better questions is going to open up my options. Considering differences. Just because I show up like this and I think this way does not mean that it is the only way. Other people show up because they have their experiences. And when I get to know them and make the connection with them and understand their differences and what makes them different, and I can glean from that. I can take something from that and add that to my life. And you may say, I don't need to know nothing else. Yep. Yes, you do. And if you look back over your life, you'll see that that's how you got to be where you are. You glean from somebody's life, whether it's our parents, again, our environment, our peers, our workplace, whatever it is, we're pulling all of that in. We're pulling all those differences in and we're making ourselves. But when we say that I'm the mold and everything else is broken, you're going to kind of struggle with solving conflict. Again, focus on the agreement. What do we agree on? We can agree on these things. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, how do we build on that? Rather than fixating on the disagreement. Most of the time in conflict, we fixate on what's wrong, what we can't resolve, why we can't agree, instead of saying, okay, here's where we do, let's build on that. And as we're building on that, we can see where some of that other stuff that we didn't agree maybe fits or not. So we can agree to disagree. Now, most of the time you see agree, disagree. If you look on the, any photos, it says agree, disagree. You see, it's a check mark and an X, agree, disagree. But why can't it be agree, disagree? Why can't it be that, we find something that we agree on and that's fine, but then we still disagree on this, and you know what, that's fine. We'll work through it because I see things a certain way and I gave it this meaning, or let's go back. I see the conflict this way, I gave it this meaning, and this is the stance that I'm taking. But so did you. You see the conflict a certain way, you've given it meaning, and you've taken a stand. That's okay. We may not agree on everything. I don't know that we're supposed to. But when we say agree to disagree and have a good attitude about it, we find that we'll have that mutual respect. We'll create a space that's safe enough for us to come and share without judgment, and we'll better understand each other. I understand, easier said than done, or some people are just not that easy to deal with. Some conflict is so deep that it's just not that easy, but try something, do something different. It is insane to keep doing it the same way and expecting for it to come out different. Try something different, right? Even if it is, your first thing that you can do, first step, I guess what you can do is say, okay, take inventory. Here's where I am. Okay, all right, good, bad, be honest with yourself. Because when you take inventory, sometimes you might be like, okay, I'm justified in my thinking. And then sometimes you're like, you know what, I might be wrong. But take inventory, that's first. And then second, open yourself up to consider others. What's their stance? And third, ask a question. Hey, where are you in this conflict? Right? Like, okay, we don't necessarily agree on this, but so how do you think and feel about it? What is it that you want out of it? And get an understanding and then build from there. So we have to remember, I say this all the time, inch by inch is a cinch, but a mile will take a while. You're not going to win the first one. The first one may not go smoothly, or you may be able to, get a quick win, because you'll practice on someone that you really like, right? A lot of the conflict sometimes comes from the fact that we just don't like the other person. So, I'm not giving in just because I don't like them, right? So sometimes the practice that you give is going to work right away, and then sometimes it's going to take a while. Don't give up. Try something. Do something. Try one of these, right? Because it's chess. It's not checkers, right? When we think about playing checkers, you have a board, you have your men here, they have their men there, and your goal is to go and either avoid getting jumped or to lure them into jumping you so that you can double jump them, right? And it's all quick. It's a quick game. You know, it can happen just like that when you're playing somebody good, you know, somebody. You know, so you play, and the goal is to get to be the king. King me, right? And you want to have all these kings so you can move all over the world, the board. So that's checkers, right? Quick, quick, quick. But resolving conflict is not always quick. You have to have some strategy behind it. You know, in chess is a long game. Sometimes it takes, you know, people play and they'll play the same game for a whole month because they're really thinking about the strategy behind it. I'm not a good chess player, but I do know how to put the pieces move. I know which ones are expendable, right? My goal is to try to lure that queen out so that I can trap her and get her out of there so that I can do a little bit more on the board without worrying about the queen lurking, right? Same thing with conflict resolution. You have to really like give yourself to this thing and think about what it is that you're doing instead of that knee-jerk response of reacting to it. You want to be effective at it. So this is, again, conflict resolution 2, building on what we learned in conflict resolution 1. And again, I don't have all the answers. My goal is to give you additional tools for your tool belt, right? And, you know, there are so many resources that's out there that helps with conflict resolution, right? You can go down the rabbit hole in YouTube's. The conflict styles is the one that I played earlier. And if you want to go back to that one, to just kind of really, you know, take inventory to see where you are in conflict, especially if you didn't do one, or if you want to kind of do your review, see where you sit. Because if I don't know me, there's no way in the world I'll be able to try to understand you. And the book by Dr. Mary Lee Adams, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life, it is life-changing, right? When you learn how to ask questions, it is going to amaze you how much better your life is going to be just by asking better, because, you know, you'll relieve some of the stress that you may have on you, because some of the stress is because you're holding on to something. Some of the stress is because you don't know something. Some of the stress is, you know, from whatever. And if you just had that question answered, you can, you know, release that and move on. All right. So I want to thank you for being a part of this session. I still have a few minutes. I feel like it's something that I want to say, and I'm not thinking about it right now, but that's okay. Oh, just, I guess, a quick example. When you're thinking about resolving conflict, you know, we think about having conflict with our bosses, or, you know, someone mentioned earlier, students, right? Apply what we just learned today to your day-to-day work. Apply that to your personal life. Practice it personally so that you can bring that experience, that knowledge, that skill to work, right? Sometimes when, you know, I've worked for enough people to know that I don't always agree with their decisions. And that's okay. When I learned how to say, okay, where am I in this? Is it because I want what I want, or because it doesn't make sense, whatever? And then when I took it and went into put one of their shoes on and said, okay, if I were a leader, you know, would I do any different? Would I do any better? Would I be any better? What you know, restraints do they have? What pressure do they have? What you know, procedures and policies are they bound to? with our students, what situation do they have? What's going on with them, right? With whomever we're having in conflict with, we have to consider our differences. Just because I may not have gone through XYZ does not mean that that doesn't matter to this conflict that we're trying to resolve. That may be the reason why we're in conflict, because I don't want to understand your meaning. It doesn't mean that we're in conflict because we have to be, just because we didn't agree. It could be just because I don't want to understand. Right? So I won't go on a soapbox. It's really difficult to take a training like this and make it specific to a diverse group, because everyone has their own level of conflict within their jobs. I would just say, take what was said and apply it to what you do. Apply it to what you do. And if you have questions or you need, I can't necessarily give you all the specifics because everything doesn't work, but I can give some suggestions, right? So if you have questions, you can email me.